ladies and gentlemen, pound for pound, TBE, Floyd Mayweather, sues Showtime, Mr. Espinoza, basically saying that, hey, you know what? $340 million of my money was misappropriated, allegedly stolen. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go inside the financial scheme. Making money versus preserving it. The saying is, a fool and his money shall soon part. Is Floyd Mayweather a fool? I don't know. Let's get into some of this straight game.
Life is like cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy Delray Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your time. Rocking the news world, rocking the financial world, rocking the sports and entertainment world. Pound for pound, TBE. I'd like to think of Floyd Mayweather as the best that ever did it. This story right here does not change my thoughts on that. And more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, for the people who are paying attention, thank you for tuning in the chat. If you choose to come in later, like I said, thank you also for tuning in. More importantly, let's delve into what this really, really means, ladies and gentlemen. Because like I said, we've seen the flash, we've seen all of the pomp and circumstance, the money, you know, the jewelry, the cars, the houses, all of those things, ladies and gentlemen. But when you're spending, listen to me, when you're spending more money than you're actually making, in the long run, if you're playing the short game, in the long run, you're going to run into financial problems. And not to say that that's what Floyd Mayweather is experiencing, but by some accounts, like I said, Floyd Mayweather is also suing a business insider for allegedly running a defamatory story in regards to his money and his finances, right? But I think this is very important. And see, a lot of people are not going to pay attention to this. They're going to laugh. They're going to look at Floyd Mayweather and say, see, ha, 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 told you so. I'm not laughing. See, I'm learning. You understand what I'm saying? And because like I said, a lot of times, you know, with African-American athletes, artists, and things of that nature, the number one downfall is financial mismanagement, right? And not having the right people in your corner to show you, like, look, these are the things that you do, these are the things that you don't do, you know what I mean? And so on and so forth. Like I said, I had been around Floyd Mayweather. I don't know much about his finances, but I just seen the atmosphere in which, like I said, he basically did all the delegating and rightfully so. But like I said, when you think about having the proper structure around you so that these things don't happen, where $340 million allegedly just goes missing. And then now you have to sue CBS, Showtime, and then there's allegations about his longtime manager, in which Floyd called the father figure, Al Haymon. But Al Haymon is not actually part of the lawsuit. It's a 25-page lawsuit, if you will, right? So like I said, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. I appreciate that y'all like to lock in, man, with Straight Game TV, where we don't chase headlines. We break them down, ladies and gentlemen. And today, we're stepping outside of the hip-hop for a moment and into the business of boxing and the business of business itself, because this story is bigger than punches. It's about power and contracts and who really controls the money, ladies and gentlemen. I'll say this: Floyd Mayweather would have no recourse if he did not have the proper paperwork in place, which is very important. Like I said, it's about power, contracts, and who really controls the money, right? Floyd Mayweather Jr., arguably the most financially successful boxer of all time. Basically, we know from the headlines, suing Showtime for $340 million, alleging a long-running scheme of financial fraud, right? These are claims filed in the court. This is not a verdict. There is no verdict as of yet, but the allegations alone shake up the boxing sport and the sports and entertainment world. Because remember, when Floyd was doing his thing in boxing and all of those things, you know, it was Floyd Mayweather, it was the flash, it was the pomp and circumstance, it was all of these things, right? Once again, let's get into what was filed, the core allegations of what was actually filed, ladies and gentlemen. And it's filed in Los Angeles Superior Court, right? And Floyd is seeking $340 million in damages, and he names Showtime, Paramount, Showtime, which is Paramount owned, Stephen Espinoza, right? A former Showtime sports chief. The key allegations, ladies and gentlemen: money owed to Mayweather was deposited into accounts. Listen, deposited into accounts controlled by his former manager, Al Haymon. The interesting part about this is Al Haymon is not a part of the lawsuit, if you will. So I don't know, what that means or what that doesn't mean, and I wouldn't want to speculate as to what it means either, right? But they're basically saying, Floyd Mayweather is saying he's owed $340 million, and the allegations basically saying that money was deposited into accounts controlled by Al Haymon without Mayweather's knowledge or consent per the complaint. This is very, very interesting, ladies and gentlemen, right? Again, this is what the lawsuit alleges. The courtroom decides the facts, not the headlines. So I don't want to get that twisted. But I think, it's interesting because, it shows that what was going on. And I understand sometimes when you have a manager, sometimes depending on what the contract says, the manager receives the check, takes his percentage, and then deposits the check into his client's, makes a transfer into the client's bank account, if you will, right? I don't know the specifics or intricacies of Floyd Mayweather's deal with Al Haymon, right? And so I don't even know if any of this happened. None of us don't know if it happened. But like I said, these are the allegations, right? We know that Floyd Mayweather is fighting Mike Tyson soon. You know what I mean? You got to look at all of those things too from that perspective. But like I said, once again, there's a $20 million question also when you think about the big picture. And the $20 million question is this. Floyd Mayweather also had alleged a while ago that Showtime still owed him $20 million from the Andre Berto fight, right? And so I don't know if this is, sometimes people make a legal move and basically, stating more. But once again, there are legal maneuvers and trying to get your money, if you will. And so this is, the question is this one of those legal maneuvers which Floyd's trying to get his $20 million that he's owed from the Berto fight from Showtime and Paramount? Now, remember, Paramount was just sold not too long ago. So it's under CBS basically parted ways with Paramount, and they sold Paramount to another investment group, if you will. And so this is going to be interesting. Will they basically say, hey, you know what, we had nothing to do with that. You got to go after CBS for that money. So like I said, that's the part that people are really not paying attention to if you really understand what's going on. The layperson will look at this situation and say, well, Floyd had all that money. He must be going broke. He must be doing this. He must be doing that. I can't tell you that. I'll be the first person not to say anything in regards to that because I don't know. I don't think anybody really, truly, honestly knows. But what's being alleged is that, you know, money was being siphoned from him, and you know, allegedly, Stephen Espinoza and Showtime Paramount had something to do with it, right? So when you think about the broader scope of what's going on, pay-per-view mega events are mentioned in the lawsuit, right? Mayweather versus Pacquiao, 2015. As you see right here in the back of me right here, actually I went to that fight, and you know, that's the shirt that Floyd had signed for me in the whole 9 yards, and the tickets and everything. And so once again, very, very, I thought it was a great fight. Like I said, Floyd was smart. It was all about, you know, hitting and not being hit. And also Mayweather versus the McGregor situation in 2017, right? The red flag allegations basically go like this, ladies and gentlemen. The requested financial records were allegedly. So evidently Floyd tried to request certain financial records from Showtime and Paramount, and possibly allegedly Stephen Espinoza, because he used to work there. And what they're basically saying is that those records were lost in a flood, stored off-site, or basically simply unavailable. This is what Floyd Mayweather is alleging in the lawsuit that was told to his team when they tried to gain access to those records, right? Excuse me. Like I said, in $1 billion sport, ladies and gentlemen, $1 billion sport, they say Floyd Mayweather made possibly over $1.2 billion. It's also been noted, and let's once again, see, like I said, once again, making the money versus preserving the money, and knowing what to do with it, right? The key is this, because there's been also allegations that Floyd sold his jet. There's a couple of the houses that were commercial properties, that were foreclosed on. And, you know, he could decide not to play it. They don't feel like it's worth it no more. I don't know. Usually that doesn't happen. They say the Girl Connection, a strip club out in Vegas, was in owed like $52,000 in back taxes. Also that, you know, just letting it be a lesson that is not making the money, is preserving the money. You know what I mean? It's trying to, you know, really set yourself up for the years to come. Like I said, you know, we're not alleging that we know Floyd Mayweather's financial situation, but we know that he's saying, hey, you know what? Somebody took my money and they didn't give me my money like they were supposed to. I don't know what took so long, but here we are, right? And let's talk about why his former manager, Al Haymon, matters, right? Haymon described, basically, Al Haymon is described in the complaint as a longtime advisor and a father figure, right? Yet, not named as a defendant. And so, I wouldn't say that's suspicious. I guess that's just what it is. And so, my thing is these secret accounts, you know what I mean? And people, you know, allegedly stealing from Floyd or whatever, and how they were handling the business. Like I said, all of this is going to come out in court. Hopefully, if they don't settle it out of court, right? You know, the legal implications involving Al Haymon, right? Is it, you know, strategic? You know, because like sometimes lawsuits don't name people accidentally or omit them casually, right? Is that strategic? Him not naming Al Haymon in the lawsuit and basically saying that, hey, some of this money was, you know, secretly or allegedly given to Al Haymon through these other accounts, and so on and so forth, right? That's another thing that has yet to be understood when we understand the bigger picture as to what this is. Is that a strategic move, not adding Al Haymon? Like I said, lawsuits don't name people accidentally or omit them casually, right? Meaning not naming them. Like I said, the claim pattern, what basically Floyd and his team is saying that the pattern of manipulation and fraud is, financial manipulation, self-dealing, control without transparency. Once again, very key things, man. Very key things, right? Financial manipulation, right? Self-dealing, meaning commingling funds and doing all of these other things, basically, allegedly stealing money, and having control without transparency, right? There's a thing when you're just transparent about everything that's going on, so that once again, when it comes time to make certain moves and decisions, a person can make those moves fully informed, and so that those moves are documented and done correctly. You know what I mean? So like I said, financial manipulation, self-dealing, and control without transparency. It's crazy. And so like I said, let's talk about the reputational damage and the broke rumors. Like I said earlier, people alleging, Floyd broke, he ain't got no money, shit ain't happening, and all of these other things, right? Once again, the alleged consequences behind situations like this, when you're talking about Floyd Mayweather and his situation, the false rumors that Mayweather was broke, right? Basically claiming emotional distress, claim reputational harm. Now, this is what was alleged against Business Insider. And they were talking about Floyd Mayweather's broke, supposedly in all of this debt, allegedly. And so, once again, is that true? We don't know. You know what I mean? Time will, what tells you? Time. Time will tell, and sometimes, like I said, depending on who and what you are and what you're trying to accomplish, we would hope, based on the things that Floyd Mayweather had said and repeatedly said over time, he basically always would say, I made smart financial investments. I made smart financial investments after, he got finished boxing, and people would ask him, hey, you make all this money, what you doing? I made smart financial investments. Well, we can hope that that may be partly true. But this here is a total different situation. This doesn't say broke. This doesn't say he don't have money. This says that somebody, what he's alleging, somebody cheated him or diverted his funds somewhere where they weren't supposed to be. Now, is that true? And he's also alleging that he's owed $20 million from the Berto fight, right? And basically, he's claimed in a lawsuit, I guess, against Business Insider, financial harm and defamation, if you will, right? In the business world, perception is currency, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, in the business world, perception is currency. But the reality is, once it kind of hits and people paint a narrative of you as being, broke or whatever, and as you move forward, does it put you in a position of where you're desperate or you look desperate because you need money and all of these other things, right? This is the thing that I think Floyd Mayweather is trying to avoid and is trying to control, right? And, when you talk about the Showtime versus Paramount situation, they respond, right? Listen, and this is the cold part about the game. Showtime and Paramount responded to Floyd Mayweather's accusations, and they call it baseless. They saying that it ain't nothing to it, right? And it's lacking legal or factual merit, right? Paramount basically is saying, in dealing with Floyd Mayweather's allegation, right? They're going to respond through the court process, right? And that's how serious disputes like this should be handled in court, not online. So Paramount basically saying these allegations are baseless. They lack legal or factual merit, right? Like I said, Floyd Mayweather has this thing coming up with Mike Tyson. I don't know how soon it is. Sometimes you could, get people talking in the media, get it hyped up. You can file a baseless lawsuit, dismiss it. The situation they could say, well, it's settled. and it really wasn't a situation. Like I said, it's a lot of things that go on in the industry, man, that a lot of people are not really aware about. And so with that being said, but the bigger picture is this, right? Why this case matters. You know what I'm saying? Boxing is a long history of fighters losing money, right? Managers controlling purses, networks holding leverage. You know what I mean? And so that's why this really, truly, honestly matters. Just not too long ago, the Terrence Crawford situation in regards to paying some kind of fee to the WBA, I believe, or something like that. Terrence Crawford was like, I ain't paying nothing. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a pay-to-play scheme, And like I said, once again, the reason, partial reason, I would say, and if, like I said, if it is any kind of factual merit or basically legal right for Floyd Mayweather to go after Paramount Showtime, the only reason that he has that ability is because he had a contract. You see what I'm saying? So, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, it's always important to get things in writing so that your legal situation is always protected. So when it comes time to file a lawsuit to make things happen like they're supposed to happen, you always have that legal, that backbone and that position where, like I said, things are clear, things are concise, and everything is supposed to be what it's supposed to be. Like I said, the fact that he didn't attach Al Haymon to the lawsuit is puzzling in itself. Don't know why, but I hopefully we'll find out. I'm thinking if there is any merit to it, it'll get settled. If it's not any merit to it, it'll go to court and they'll fight it out. And like I say, may the best person win, like just like when they're in the ring. You know what I mean? But like they said, fool and his money shall soon part, man. And you can't make that shit up. Like I said, once again, we've seen so many boxers, man. Mike Tyson, going, have that financial difficulty, dealing with Don King, and so many other fighters, man, that or entertainers and things of that nature. Once again, you kind of find out whether it was dealing with taxes, whether it's dealing with financial mismanagement, somebody stealing their money, or whatever have you, right? There's always these reoccurring themes and stories. Like I said, one thing to make the money and earn the money, but it's another thing to know how to preserve it and think long term, right? So this lawsuit, basically, it doesn't rewrite history, right? But it forces a conversation about power, transparency, and the biggest word of all, accountability, right? Power, transparency, and accountability. Like I said, a lot of people lack that word accountability in sports. You know what I mean? You see NBA players, you see NFL players. We just seen the brother Tyreek Hill. He's going through his situation with his ex, and mainly because, just not really understanding finances, man. And then, you dealing with people who feel like, and his ex-wife, they, I think 2 years, a year, something like that, they were together, and she was wanting $37,000 in child support and whatever it was, right? And you could see immediately that she was going after the bag. It wasn't even about, I don't even think it was about loving him, from that perspective, right? But like I said, people live and they learn. You know what I mean? So you got to be really, really careful about who you dealing with. People, committing fraud and doing things and all of these other things. You know what I mean? To try to get money. And so it's crazy. It's crazy, 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 right? But like I said, the courts will decide what's true, whether any of this is true. Like I said, over here, straight game. We just trying to understand what's being alleged and why it matters. Like I said, once again, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. What's up, Ma Dizzle in the building? Who else? Chuck Dickerson, what's good? All of the folks who tuned in, all of the folks who are not tuned in, who are watching from the outside, I appreciate that too. Like I said, once again, but this is very interesting, man. Like, And then you got other things in the news also, but I thought this one was interesting. Like I said, I'm a fan of Floyd Mayweather, but you got to call a spade a spade. You know what I mean? You got to call it what it is. And hopefully, like I said, you know, all of the news and fluff and hubbub, you know, behind whatever his finances is, you know, hopefully he'll get his situation together and be able to move forward. Like I said, we don't really know what it is, but it's been alleged that, you know, a couple of the houses, he sold a couple of the mansions, you know, a few of the commercial properties were foreclosed on, owed $52,000 in back taxes for one of the properties. I believe it was the Girl Club in Vegas. And so, like I said, once again, ladies and gentlemen, my thing is, if you're watching this video, don't laugh, learn. Don't laugh, learn. Your boy Delray, straight gang.
Life is like some cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.